He found a 8 months pregnant waitress sleeping behind the diner. His reaction shocked Everyon. The mist curled around the lamplights, making the small village seem older than time itself. At the edge of the village stood a lonely inn, its wooden beams worn by years of storms. Inside, the warm glow of lanterns and the faint scent of bread promised comfort. Yet beyond the back of the inn, hidden from the eyes of the world, something unusual stirred in the darkness. Lord Kale, the heir to the northern throne, rode through the village that night on a black horse with eyes like midnight. His cloak, heavy with the rain, clung to him as he dismounted in front of the inn. Kale was a man spoken of in hushed tones, powerful, distant, and rumored to possess the knowledge of old magics. Few dared approach him, yet something about the village called him that evening. Perhaps it was the stories whispered of strange happenings, or perhaps, as he always felt, fate had a hand in guiding his steps. Kale's boots splashed through puddles as he rounded the back of the inn. It was there that he saw her. She lay curled in the mud, her dark hair plastered to her face by the rain. Her clothing was soaked, clinging to her form, and her body seemed small and fragile beneath the weight she carried. Kale's sharp eyes noted her condition immediately, her belly rounded, heavy, as if carrying a life not yet born. There was a strange glow about her, a faint shimmer of silver light along the curve of her hand, as though something unseen marked her. For a long moment, Kale simply watched. There was a part of him, buried deep and seldom acknowledged, that wanted to turn away. It whispered that involvement in this woman's life would bring chaos. And yet, another part, older, wiser, and less understood, pushed him closer. He knelt beside her, letting the rain wash over him, and spoke softly, testing the waters of her trust. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice low but steady. The woman stirred, blinking against the rain, and met his gaze with wide, cautious eyes. There was fear there, yes, but also a quiet defiance. She did not speak immediately, and Kale felt the tension coil between them like a living thing. Finally, she whispered, her voice trembling yet firm, I need rest." Kale nodded, studying her closely. Her name, her story, and the reason she had come to this forsaken corner of the world were mysteries. And yet, he sensed something profound in her presence, something tied to the old magic he had long studied, the kind whispered about in legends that spoke of children born under strange moons and women who carried destinies in their wombs. He extended a hand to help her rise. For a moment she hesitated, as if unsure whether he was friend or foe. Then slowly, she placed her small hand in his, and Kale felt the faintest pulse of energy, a signal that the connection between them was no ordinary one. "You must come inside," he said, helping her to her feet. "It is too dangerous to remain here." The woman allowed him to guide her to the inside door, where the warmth of the lanterns cut through the chill. She shivered, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Kale sensed her fear, and despite himself, he felt a flicker of protectiveness he had not felt in many years. He led her to a quiet corner where a chair and a blanket awaited. "You may rest here," he instructed. "No one will disturb you tonight." She sank into the chair, exhausted, her body trembling with fatigue and the weight she carried. Kale watched her, noting the pale curve of her cheek, the determined set of her jaw, and the small movements that betrayed a strength she seemed unaware of. For the first time he felt something stir in him beyond curiosity or obligation, something dangerous and deep. Something he had thought lost long ago, the ache of longing. Hours passed, and the rain continued to fall. Kale remained nearby, standing silently in the shadows, unsure why he could not leave her side. Every now and then she would murmur to herself soft words he could not fully hear, yet they resonated in the silence of the room. He could feel the weight of her story pressing against the air between them, a tale of suffering, endurance, and perhaps a hint of magic he had not yet seen. It was then that he noticed the mark on her hand, the faint silver glow that pulsed with each breath. It was a sigil of ancient design, a symbol of fate and power intertwined. Kale's heart tightened. He had seen such marks in old tomes, read of their significance in stories meant only for kings and scholars. They spoke of women who carried more than children. They carried futures, destinies that could shape the very world. "Who are you?" he whispered, more to himself than to her. The woman's eyes met his, wide and wary. She shook her head slowly, as if even the mention of her name was forbidden. "I am no one," she said softly. "At least, no one who matters to this world." Kale frowned. He did not believe her. There was a strength in her that defied her fragile appearance, a quiet power that resonated with the pulse of the mark. He felt an old instinct awaken, one he had tried to bury beneath years of duty and cruelty, the need to protect, to guide, and perhaps to redeem. "Then I will see that the world does not harm you," he said finally, "at least not while I am here." The woman's gaze softened, but only for a moment. Then it darkened again, filled with fear of forces she did not name. Kale could sense the weight she carried, the burden of a life yet unborn, of a destiny she did not wish to bear, yet could not escape. And in that moment he understood. This was no ordinary encounter. This woman, this child she carried, was tied to the very threads of fate he had long studied. A sudden gust of wind rattled the inn's windows, carrying with it a whisper, soft and almost musical. Kale's eyes narrowed. He listened, hearing a voice that seemed to come from nowhere, yet spoke with certainty. A name, hers, carried on the night wind. Her hand tightened around the blanket in her lap. "You heard that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I did," Kale replied, his own voice barely above the sound of the rain. "And it is why you cannot stay here, not safely." The woman looked at him, fear and trust mingling in her eyes. She wanted to run, to hide, yet something about Kale, the way he stood there, calm and unyielding, made her hesitate. Kale stepped closer, letting the light from the lantern fall on his face. "I will protect you," he said, "but you must trust me." For a moment she looked as though she might refuse. Then, slowly, she nodded. Not out of obedience, but out of necessity, a quiet acknowledgement that she had no choice if she wished to survive the night. Outside, the storm raged on, rain hammering the roof and wind howling through the trees. But within the small inn, an uneasy peace settled, a fragile truce between two souls brought together by fate, fear, and an unseen bond neither fully understood. Kale knew the night would be long, and that the journey they were about to begin was filled with danger. But for the first time in many years, he felt alive, stirred by something more than duty or ambition. He felt the stirrings of a connection that could change everything. Then, as if on cue, the sigil on the woman's hand flared with silver light, brighter than before, and the whispering returned. This time it was not just a name. It was a call, urgent and demanding, filled with a power that made Kale's blood run cold. He reached out instinctively, placing a hand over hers, feeling the pulse of energy beneath her skin. His eyes widened as he realized the truth. This child, this woman, was no ordinary life. They were a force of destiny itself, bound by magic older than the kingdom he was heir to. And at that moment, the quiet room seemed to grow smaller, the shadows pressing closer. Kale understood something he had not faced in many years. The story of their lives had already begun, and it was far larger than either of them could yet comprehend. The woman looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. What happens now?" she whispered. Kale did not answer immediately. He only held her hand, the warmth of his touch a small shield against the storm outside. "Now," he said finally, "we survive the night, and tomorrow we discover what fate has brought to us." Outside, the wind shrieked and the rain pounded, but within the inn, two lives, bound by destiny, mystery, and unspoken longing, waited for the dawn. And the sigil on her hand pulsed once more, bright and insistent, as if announcing to the world that their story had only just begun. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the village drenched in quiet. Mist rose from the cobblestones like spirits escaping the earth, curling around the legs of the inn as if inspecting the visitors within. Cale did not sleep that night. He remained near the woman, Lysandra, as she had finally whispered her name, watching her chest rise and fall with the rhythm of exhaustion and life. Her child stirred now and then, tiny movements that spoke of an unseen energy inside her. Cale had always been a man of control. He commanded armies, ruled estates, and bent political rivals to his will with the precision of a cold blade. But here, with Lysandra, control felt impossible. She was fragile yet fierce, scared yet unyielding. The way she avoided his gaze, the way her hands instinctively protected her belly, stirred something inside him he had long buried. Concern, protectiveness, and something more tender, unnameable. He stepped outside, letting the morning chill wash over him, hoping it would clear his mind. The village had begun to wake, but whispers already circulated. Villagers had seen him arrive the night before, a figure both feared and revered, leading a strange woman into the inn. Rumors traveled faster than truth, and Cale felt a prickling unease. The child she carried and the sigil on her hand were not meant for public eyes. If anyone discovered it, danger would follow them quickly. Returning inside, Cale found Lysandra sitting by the window, her hands folded over her belly. The light of dawn glinted off her hair, making it seem almost silver in the soft morning. She looked smaller in the vast room of the inn, yet there was a dignity in her posture, a quiet resistance he could not ignore. "You need to eat," Cale said, setting a small bowl of porridge in front of her. He did not sit, instead remaining standing, watching her closely. Lysandra's lips pressed together, but she took the food. I do not want to trouble you," she whispered. Her voice was low, as though speaking louder would summon unseen dangers. "You are no trouble," Cale said firmly, "and hunger will weaken you and the child." She glanced at him, searching his expression. There was a truth in his eyes she could not deny. Though he was a lord, feared and distant, there was a warmth here she had not expected. Still, she hesitated to trust it. Trust, she had learned, could be dangerous. She started, then paused, the words caught in her throat. "There are things you do not know, things about me, about this child." Cale tilted his head, curiosity sharpened by instinct. "Then tell me," he said. "I will hear whatever you choose to say. But nothing will leave this room without my permission." For a long moment, Lysandra studied him, weighing the risk. Finally, she took a deep breath, her fingers tightening over the sigil on her hand. "This child is not ordinary. The night I discovered I was carrying life, I also discovered a curse. An old, dark magic. It follows me, follows the child. If it is not controlled, it could bring ruin. To me, to the village, perhaps even beyond." Cale felt the familiar pull of his old studies stir within him. Ancient curses, sigils, and forbidden magic. These were the subjects he had devoted his life to understanding. And yet, nothing in his books had prepared him for the reality of standing before someone whose very existence was entwined with forces older than the kingdom itself. "Then we will face it," Cale said, his tone firm, unyielding. "Together." Lysandra looked at him, doubt flickering across her features. "Together?" she asked, almost bitterly. "You do not know me. You do not know what I have carried, the shadows that cling to me." Cale stepped closer, the warmth of his presence filling the small room. "I have known darkness," he said softly, "and I have faced it. I will not turn away now. You and this child, you will not face it alone." Her eyes softened slightly, but fear remained. "And if I fail? If the curse cannot be broken, then we fight until the end," Cale replied, his voice steady. "I will not let you be destroyed by a fate that is not yet sealed." Outside, the village stirred. Merchants opened their shops, children ran between puddles, and the air smelled of wet earth and hope. But Cale and Lysandra felt the world shrink to the small room, to the fragile trust forming between them. It was an unspoken understanding, one of necessity, survival, and something deeper, a bond neither fully understood but both sensed growing stronger. The day passed quietly, though Kale remained vigilant. He watched as Lysandra moved slowly, careful not to strain herself, yet there was a grace in her movements that reminded him of stories of queens and warriors long past. Every glance, every fleeting expression seemed loaded with hidden strength and unspoken fears. By evening, Kale decided they could not remain in the inn indefinitely. The sigil on Lysandra's hand was a beacon, subtle but potent, and he knew the forces behind the curse would sense it. If they were discovered here, the consequences could be catastrophic. "We must leave," he said, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "There is a safe place beyond the village, a house abandoned but strong. No one comes there and the land around it is protected by old wards." Lysandra looked at him, uncertainty clouding her features. "You would take me there, with my condition with the child." Kale's gaze did not waver. "Yes, you will not be safe here. I will protect you, but you must trust me." She hesitated, weighing the fear of moving against the fear of remaining. Finally, she nodded. "I trust you for now," she said, her voice soft but firm. Night fell as they made their way out of the village. Kale led, his senses alert, every shadow and rustle in the woods setting his instincts on edge. Lysandra followed closely, her hand on her belly, whispering small words of comfort to the child inside her. They had not gone far when a figure emerged from the mist. Tall, cloaked, and moving with unnatural grace, it blocked their path. Kale's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sword, though he sensed that steel alone would not be enough. "You carry the child," the figure said, voice like wind over dead leaves. "The one who should not be born." Lysandra stepped back instinctively, fear and defiance mixing in her posture. Kale stepped forward, placing himself between her and the stranger. "You will not harm her," he said, voice cold and commanding. The figure tilted its head, studying him. "The curse stirs," it whispered, "and the child will either destroy or redeem." Kale's jaw tightened. He had read warnings in old texts, had studied the prophecies, yet standing here, hearing the words spoken aloud, the weight of reality pressed down on him. "Then we choose redemption," he said firmly. The figure's eyes glowed faintly. "You are bold, Lord, but boldness alone will not save her." Before Kale could respond, the figure melted back into the mist, leaving a chill in its wake. Lysandra shivered, her hands trembling. Kale gently took her hand, steadying her. "You see," he said softly, "this is only the beginning. The world knows of her, and it will not let her be at peace." Lysandra looked at him, fear and trust mingling in her eyes. "And yet you have not turned away," she said quietly. Kale shook his head. "I do not turn from what must be faced, and I do not leave what I have chosen to protect." They continued through the misty forest, every step heavy with the knowledge that danger lurked unseen. Yet in the quiet moments between whispered fears and cautious glances, a bond began to form. It was fragile, delicate, but undeniable. Two souls, brought together by fate, fear, and destiny, learning to trust one another in a world that seemed determined to test them at every turn. As they approached the abandoned house, Kale's eyes scanned the shadows. The wind whispered again, carrying a voice he did not recognize, soft yet commanding. Lysandra stiffened, sensing the words meant for her. Kale squeezed her hand. "Whatever comes," he said, "we face it together." And then, from deep within the forest, a faint light flickered, pale and ghostly, moving with a will of its own. It pulsed in rhythm with the sigil on Lysandra's hand, as though calling to something beyond their understanding. Kale's eyes narrowed. "We are not alone," he said, voice low. Lysandra's breath caught, fear and wonder mingling on her face. "Then what waits for us?" she whispered. Kale did not answer immediately. He only held her hand, ready to defend, guide, and protect. The shadows around them seemed to shift and deepen, alive with secrets, curses, and a destiny neither could yet grasp fully. The abandoned house stood silent among twisted trees and tangled undergrowth, its walls weathered by time and storms. Inside, dust coated the wooden beams and shadows clung to every corner, but to Kale and Lysandra, it felt like the first place in days where they could breathe without fear. Kale set lanterns around the room, their flickering light casting long, dancing shadows. Lysandra settled near the hearth, her hands still resting protectively on her belly, eyes wary of every creak in the old building. Kale moved through the room, checking the windows and doors, ensuring every entry point was secure. Even here in this quiet sanctuary he felt it, the pull of the curse, like a low hum beneath his skin, reminding him that danger was never far. He had faced countless threats before, but something about this curse was different. It was older, deeper, and intimately tied to the child she carried. Kale, Lysandra's voice broke the silence. Why me? Why now? Why this child? Kale paused, resting his hand on the rough wooden table. He did not answer immediately because the truth was not simple. I do not know, he said finally, but I know that it is not by chance that we met. There is a reason fate brought you to me just as it brought me to you, and together we may find a way to survive what is coming. Lysandra looked down, her fingers tracing the faint glow of the sigil on her hand. It feels heavy, like the world is pressing on me on this child. I am scared, Kale, so very scared. Kale knelt before her, taking her hands gently in his. Fear is natural, he said softly. But you are not alone. I will not leave you. Not now, not ever. For a moment her eyes searched his, as if trying to read the truth behind the calm, confident exterior. There was something in Kale that went beyond fearlessness, something softer, more human. A strength born not from power or command, but from the willingness to face what most would flee. And slowly, a small spark of trust kindled within her. That night, as the wind moaned outside, Kale and Lysandra spoke in whispers, sharing fragments of their pasts. She told him of the day she first discovered the curse, of the nights she had run, hiding in alleys, afraid that the magic she carried would bring harm to everyone she loved. Kale, in turn, revealed pieces of himself he rarely allowed anyone to see. The moments of failure, the cruel choices he had made to maintain his power, and the loneliness that had shaped him into a man feared by all. Through shared stories, they found common ground in their pain and resilience. The barriers between them softened, replaced by a fragile, cautious connection that neither fully understood, but both felt growing. It was a bond born of survival, yes, but also of something deeper, a recognition that in each other they might find the strength to face the impossible. The following morning, Kale decided it was time to act. He could not remain passive. The curse would not wait, and danger would inevitably find them if they lingered. He needed to seek answers, and the only place to find them lay deep within the cursed forest that bordered the kingdom. Legends spoke of an ancient temple long forgotten, where knowledge of old magic and curses could be uncovered. Lysandra looked at him, worry etched into her features. The forest, it is dangerous. Many have gone in and never returned. Kale met her gaze steadily. I have faced dangers before, and I am not alone this time. You and the child are with me. We will face it together. Reluctantly, Lysandra nodded. Though fear gripped her, she felt a flicker of courage, fueled by Kale's presence and the strange, undeniable pull between them. She had fled for so long, hiding from her fate, but now she realized that to protect herself and her child, she could no longer run. They set out at first light, moving cautiously through the dense forest. Mist clung to the trees, and the air was thick with the scent of earth and rain. Strange sounds echoed in the distance, whispers that seemed to come from the trees themselves, shadows that shifted just beyond the corner of their eyes. Every step felt heavy with unseen eyes watching, judging, testing them. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional word between them. Kale remained alert, his senses sharp, every sound and movement analyzed for threats. Lysandra followed closely, the sigil on her hand pulsing faintly, almost as if guiding them forward. Suddenly, the forest opened to a small clearing. In its center stood an ancient stone structure, half consumed by vines and moss. Kale's heart quickened. This had to be the temple mentioned in the legends. The air around it hummed with magic, old and potent, and Kale could feel it resonating with the sigil on Lysandra's hand. "This is it," he whispered. "We must enter carefully. The knowledge here may hold the key to controlling the curse." Lysandra's fingers tightened over her belly. "And if it does not," Kale's eyes softened, a rare warmth breaking through his usually cold demeanor, "then we fight, together." Inside the temple, the air was thick with the weight of centuries. Stone walls were etched with symbols of power and protection, glowing faintly in response to Kale's presence. He moved forward, reading the ancient carvings, feeling the pulse of magic in the air. Lysandra followed, her eyes wide with awe and fear, sensing the immense power surrounding them. As they reached the inner sanctum, a sudden chill filled the room. Shadows gathered at the corners, moving with intent as though alive. Kale's hand went instinctively to his sword, though he knew it would do little against whatever force lingered here. "You have come far," a voice echoed through the chamber, neither male nor female, but full of authority. "But the curse you seek to control is older than kings, older than your kingdom. Are you ready to face the truth?" Kale stepped forward, his voice steady. "I am ready. I will not fail her nor the child." The shadows shifted, coalescing into a figure, a dark reflection of Kale himself, eyes glowing with a malevolent light. "Then face me," it said, voice cold and sharp. "For only by confronting the darkness within can you hope to protect her." Lysandra gasped, clutching Kale's arm. What is this?" Kale's jaw tightened. "It is me, or rather the part of me that I have tried to bury. My mistakes, my cruelty, it has taken form to test us." The figure stepped closer, and Kale could feel the weight of it pressing against his mind. Memories of his past mistakes, his failures, and the harshness he had shown to others surged forward, threatening to overwhelm him. He looked at Lysandra, seeing the trust and fear in her eyes, and knew he could not falter, not now, not ever. He drew a deep breath, grounding himself in the present. "I am not the man I was," he said firmly. "I have changed, and I will protect her. I will protect the child. That is my choice, my will." The dark figure laughed, a hollow, chilling sound that echoed through the chamber. "Choice alone does not undo fate. You must prove it. You must fight yourself." Kale stepped forward, meeting the shadow with unwavering eyes. Every strike, every movement was a battle not only of skill but of will. The shadow mirrored his actions, pushing him to confront the parts of himself he had long denied. Lysandra watched, fear and awe mingling in her gaze, realizing that Kale's struggle was more than physical. It was the struggle of a man seeking redemption. Hours seemed to pass, though time felt meaningless within the temple. Finally, Kale, exhausted and battered, faced the shadow one last time. With a final surge of will, he embraced the truth of his past, acknowledging his faults without letting them define him. The shadow dissolved, leaving only silence, broken by the faint hum of magic in the air. Lysandra moved to him, placing her hands on his shoulders. "Kale, you did it," she whispered. Kale looked at her, the weight of relief and exhaustion on his face. "We did it," he corrected softly. "Together." The sigil on Lysandra's hand pulsed brighter, its glow now steady and calm. Kale understood. The first step in controlling the curse had been achieved, but he also knew that this was only the beginning. The forces they faced were vast, ancient, and patient, and the child would be the key to what came next. As they prepared to leave the temple, a distant roar echoed through the forest, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Trees trembled and the wind carried a chilling promise of more trials to come. Kale took Lysandra's hand, squeezing it gently. "Whatever comes, we will face it," he said. Lysandra nodded, her eyes reflecting both fear and determination. "Together," she repeated. But deep in the shadows, beyond the edge of the forest, Unseen eyes watched their every move. And the whispering began again, soft and insistent, carrying a warning. The heart of the curse had awakened, and it hungered for more than control. Cliffhanger. A sudden crack of light and shadow split the forest sky, signaling the arrival of an unknown, powerful force, and Lysandra's sigil flared violently in response, as if the very destiny of the child was calling to it. The forest was alive with shadows and whispers, though the first hints of dawn began to pierce the horizon. Kale and Lysandra stood at the edge of the ancient clearing where the temple had been, their hands tightly clasped. The air trembled with the pulse of the sigil on Lysandra's hand, now steady but insistent, calling out to forces beyond their understanding. Kale's jaw was tight, his eyes scanning the trees. "The heart of the curse is awake," he said, "and it knows we are here." Lysandra nodded, her face pale but resolute. "Then we face it," she whispered. She rested a hand on her belly, feeling the child stir in response to the tension in the air. It was as if the unborn life understood more than she did, that the fate of many rested on their courage. The forest shifted, the shadows growing longer and darker, coalescing into forms that moved with intent. From the mist, a figure emerged, immense and terrifying, its presence demanding attention. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, and its voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You carry the one who should not be born," it said. "Do you know the power you summon?" Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Lysandra and the force before them. "We know enough to fight for her, for the child," he said firmly, "and we will not let fear decide our fate." The figure's gaze fell on Lysandra. "Your child is the bridge between worlds, the balance of power and destiny. If you fail, all will fall." Lysandra's fingers tightened over the sigil, the glow brightening in response to the threat. "I will not fail," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "I will protect my child, and we will end this curse together." The creature moved, and with it, the shadows surged, pressing against Kale and Lysandra. He could feel the weight of the curse, the accumulation of centuries of darkness trying to overwhelm them. Yet, in the midst of the fear, he felt a clarity he had never known. This was more than magic. It was choice, love, and trust made tangible. Kale extended his hand to Lysandra. "We fight together," he said. She nodded, and their hands met, the sigil's glow spreading across both their palms. In that instant, a wave of warmth passed through them, as if the child within Lysandra had lent its own strength to their resolve. The shadows surged forward, and Kale met them with a force of his own. He had always relied on strength, strategy, and magic, but now he drew on something deeper: love, trust, and determination. Every movement, every command was a promise. They would not fail, not while they could act. Lysandra raised her hand, the sigil flaring like a beacon in the mist. A light spread outward, pushing back the shadows, creating a barrier of energy that trembled with life. The force before them roared, resisting, but Kale moved closer, drawing from the same source, merging his will with hers. Together they channeled the energy, their hands linked, their hearts united. The glow spread across the forest, cutting through darkness and fear, illuminating the hidden corners of the cursed land. The creature's roar became a cry of frustration, fading as the light grew stronger. Lysandra's breath came in shallow gasps, her strength wavering, but Kale's steady presence gave her courage. "You are strong," he said, voice soft but powerful, "stronger than the curse itself." She looked at him, and in her eyes he saw the reflection of his own fears, hopes, and desires. "And you," she said quietly, "you have changed. You have always been strong, but now you fight for more than power. You fight for love." Kale's eyes softened, and for the first time in years he let himself feel completely. "And that is enough," he replied. The light intensified, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. The shadows began to dissolve, retreating into the mist, unable to withstand the combined strength of Kale and Lysandra. The creature let out a final roar before vanishing, leaving behind only the soft rustle of leaves and the echo of power spent. Exhausted, Kale lowered his hands, breathing heavily. Lysandra leaned against him, her forehead resting against his chest. The sigil on her hand dimmed to a gentle glow, calm and steady. The curse, at last, was broken, or at least contained. For a moment they stood in silence, the enormity of what they had accomplished settling over them. Neither spoke, for words could not capture the weight, the relief, and the quiet joy of survival. Kale finally spoke, his voice low but tender. "It is done for now." Lysandra smiled weakly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "We did it together." He held her close, feeling the child stir against him. "And the child is safe. That is all that matters." They began the journey back through the forest, moving cautiously but with a newfound confidence. The shadows no longer pressed against them. The air no longer carried whispers of danger. Instead, there was a sense of balance, as if the forest itself acknowledged the victory of light and trust over darkness and fear. When they reached the village, dawn was breaking fully. The streets were bathed in golden light, children laughing as they ran through puddles, and the inn stood quiet, its wooden beams glowing in the morning sun. Life moved on, ordinary and simple, while Kale and Lysandra carried within them the extraordinary. Kale led her to a small home he had prepared, a place of warmth, safety, and quiet peace. The house was modest, but to them it was a sanctuary. Lysandra settled inside, finally able to rest without fear. Kale stood by the window, watching the horizon, knowing the journey was far from over, but for the first time, believing they could face whatever came next, together. That evening, as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Kale and Lysandra sat together outside, hands intertwined. They spoke little, content to let silence speak the words their hearts could not fully capture. Every glance, every gentle touch, every shared breath deepened the bond they had forged in fire, fear, and trust. Lysandra rested her head on Kale's shoulder. "Do you think the curse is truly gone?" she asked softly. Kale kissed the top of her hair, a promise in the gesture. "Perhaps," he said, "or perhaps it is only waiting, but if it returns, we will face it together." The child stirred again, a small kick that made them both smile. It was a reminder of life, hope, and the future they now held in their hands. Kale placed his hand over hers on her belly, feeling the pulse of the little life within. "You are the light," he whispered, "and we will protect that light no matter what comes." Night fell fully and the stars appeared, bright and distant. The world seemed vast, full of unseen dangers and hidden beauty. Kale and Lysandra remained seated, side by side, hearts aligned in quiet understanding. They had faced darkness, confronted the past, and embraced the unknown together. And in that union they had found redemption, not only for themselves, but for the future they now carried. The village slept, unaware of the epic struggle that had occurred just beyond its borders. But in the home at the edge of the forest, two lives, intertwined by fate, courage, and love, rested at last, ready to greet the dawn of a new era. And somewhere beyond the reach of their sight, the sigil on Lysandra's hand pulsed gently, as if whispering a single truth. The story was not over. The world held more challenges, more wonders, and more moments of love yet to be discovered. But for now, they were together. Kale pressed a kiss to Lysandra's temple, his hand lingering over hers. "No matter what comes," he whispered, "we will face it together." And in the quiet night, with the stars above and the soft rhythm of life surrounding them, the darkness that had haunted them faded, leaving only hope, courage, and the promise of love. Cliffhanger resolution. The curse was broken, the child safe, and Kale and Lysandra united. Yet the sigil pulsed softly, a gentle reminder that destiny is never finished, and their journey, though victorious, was only beginning.